All right. Thank you for joining us, and we are here live another Monday on For the Hour. This is Tobago Updates. I am Edison Thomas, and I will be your host guiding this sparkling discussion this afternoon. We have a wonderful program in store for you tonight. But before we get into that program, right, simple note before we start, right? Tobago Updates is a free speech media platform. Tobago Updates is not in the business of suppressing free speech, right? So on Friday 17th, we had an incident take place with the Tobago Updates morning show where the live morning show was taken down by Meta. We also know it as Facebook for copyright infringement, intellectual property reasons. We are currently having it resolved, but it will take some time before it comes back live. However, we just saw it fit to explain to the public that it was not intentionally done by Tobago Updates, and we are in the business of promoting free speech. Once it is that anyone of the public has a view, once it is respectful, we will have you on here on our program, and you're welcome on our program. All right. So again, sorry for any inconvenience caused or any distraction that may have caused. But again, Tobago Updates is in the business of free speech. All right. So that being said, we move on to tonight's program. All right. And so tonight we have a packed program for you with a stirring discussion on the current events that happened today. What is current, you might ask? Well, Trinidad and Tobago has officially inaugurated its 7th president of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago today, March 20th of the year 2023. The new president is Miss Christine Kangaloo, Her Excellency. All right? And so, Tobago Updates, we want to extend our heartfelt congratulations to her on her new appointment. And we hope in Tobago, on Tobago Updates, and by extension, the country, we hope that she serves with diligence and without fear or favor, to the best of her ability and to the benefit of all the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And so, that being said, we inaugurated our president today, and so our topic tonight is the office of the president, all right? And so we're going to be talking around the office of the president and the importance of the office of the president. There have been discussions and murmurings over the past couple of years about the office of the president, and so we just want to discuss from multiple different standpoints about the office of the president. Tonight, let me introduce our sterling panel. All right. So firstly, no stranger to the show, right? We have had him here multiple times. All right. Mr. Leroy George, right? Welcome back to the program. All right. Wonderful to have you here once again. We also have Mr. Anthony James, again, no stranger to the program. All right. Good to have you. I must say, and I don't want to show no impartiality, but Mr. James is my favorite guest. I love to have him on the program. I always love to hear his thoughts and his opinions on certain topics. And we have a newbie on the panel tonight, right? In the spirit of International Women's Month, we have a lady on the panel tonight, sterling lady, Miss Adana Kombi. Wonderful to have you on the program here tonight, right? Don't mind the two beasts on your side here, right? You'll do just fine. I know that your thoughts and everything here would shine through, right? Good. So, guys, inauguration of the president. We are now in 2023, and Trinidad and Tobago now has its 7th president. All right, that was elected today. All right. Firstly, Miss Christine Kangaloo, she comes in with a wealth of political experience. All right. No political bacchanal. She has a clean slate as we could have found, right? Which is what you want in a president, right? And so we just want to get your thoughts early on the appointment, just the general appointment. And we're going to start with our lady on the panel tonight. Ladies first, Ms. Adala Kombi. What would you have thought about our new president?
Pick on the newbie. It's such fun to be here tonight, and it's funny that it's really fortunate that you started off introducing me, relating to International Women's Day and International Women's Month. So of course I'm going to talk about the fact that she is our second consecutive female president, which makes me feel as if there is purpose in women.
Right.
That we can take authority in spaces that are usually dominated by men. So that is a very proud moment for me, and I'm sure for a lot of women in Trinidad and Tobago. And I paid attention to her speech, and I was impressed by some of the things that she spoke about, some of the things she wants to implement in relation to the authority, which is one of the things I want us to talk about tonight, the authority that is given to the office of the president. Because I think that there's a line that people still don't understand. What is the role and the function of the president of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago?
Right. Mr. James, we're going to go with you. What do you think of the new appointment? You have a new president.
What was it? It's interesting that she speaks of the role, function, the authority that the president has. It is misunderstood. And the reason for that misunderstanding is the cooperation or the collusion between Dr. Eric Williams, who was the prime minister when we had the first governor general, which office now is now replaced by
the president.
The president. So, and people got the wrong impression. The proper interpretation of the presidency was performed by A.N.R. Robinson. The president is the head of state, and people need to understand that. And he has a constitution, section 74, right? Executive authority. Chapter 5, section 74, executive authority. And what it says, I'll paraphrase, but almost get it verbatim. The executive authority, and notice what I said, the executive, the governmental authority, the policy authority in Trinidad and Tobago shall be vested in the president. And he, that's what the constitution says, may discharge those responsibilities. The only person in Trinidad and Tobago and any constitution like we have that exercises executive authority is the president. Not the prime minister, not the chief secretary. Section 74, chapter 5 is there. The executive authority in Trinidad and Tobago shall be vested in the president, and he may discharge those responsibilities either directly or indirectly through officers subordinate. That's the government subordinate to him, and we need to understand that. And so we have to, as a people, decide whether or not we want the type of presidency that we have. Some people call it ceremonial. It is not written there that it is ceremonial, and it is not ceremonial as far as I'm concerned, because it speaks to the executive authority. It carries a lot of function, and the oaths of office too are different. The way it says by the president, why is the others are swearing to uphold the Constitution? President doesn't uphold the Constitution. President defends the Constitution, meaning to say the president is the embodiment of the state with all the ideals and safeguards the state. That's the role of the president. It's a huge responsibility. Given the culture, the political culture, they don't function that way. And they really give their power to the prime minister. And this is why Lloyd Best, if you remember him, deceased Lloyd Best, one of the foremost intellectuals in the Caribbean and in Trinidad, late Lloyd Best, he would have said that what you really have now is really in the prime minister is an executive president.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing now, because the president, the office of the office holders in the presidency, they defer their authority
to the prime minister
unconstitutionally to the prime minister. This is why the prime minister could have gone and changed the merit list, and the president just is a betrayal of the oath and a betrayal of the state. And don't call Trinidad and Tobago a country or a nation, because we are not. Trinidad and Tobago is not a country. It's not a nation. It's a state. Because Tobago and Trinidad never came together to form a nation. Even as we talk about the office of the president, let me close off. Yeah. Even as we talk about the office of the president, we have to understand what role did Tobago play in having a president over it.
Yeah.
Tobago is silent in that. We end up with a president. You follow what I'm saying? And this is why we need a total overhaul of the Constitution in Trinidad and Tobago.
All right. See why Mr. James is one of my favorites is because every time he comes, I just learn so much because he has a historical standpoint to back up a lot of his views and standpoint. And all of his views and opinions are backed up with history and facts. All right. But I don't want to forget Mr. George. Don't think I forget you. Right? So, Mr. George, again, same question to you. We have a new president. What are your immediate thoughts on the appointment?
My immediate thoughts was actually affected by Mr. James' contribution a little while because when he spoke about having an executive president, which goes against the Constitution, which goes against the responsibilities of the president, where that president isn't operating as independently as the Constitution would have desired for it to be, as democracy, as everything where good governance is concerned, demands. We have seen in the past where you had presidents that seem to have been controlled by the prime minister or a political party or something. And so, of course, there is a concern on my part that we may be going into a situation like that again. Right? Yeah. However, I am optimistic, and I'll tell you why I'm optimistic, even though we've had she being the 7th president. First off, the fact that she's a woman, I actually didn't even think about it because I'm looking at her career. I'm looking at her career, and it is so impressive. Right? She's so decorated in the judicial system. She's so decorated in the legislative system. And now she gets an opportunity to hold the third arm of the government, being the president right now. And when I think about past presidents, only 2 presidents I could think about. One may have had more experience than her, or may have been poised for greatness more so than her. I'd say A&R Robinson possibly, and then maybe possibly Ellis Clark. Right? And when you look at the accomplishments, I am optimistic that she's looking at those who came before her and she's saying, you know what? I have the ability, because I am built, custom made for this job, more so than most who have held the job. I have the ability to have the legacy that those men left behind. And just to remind the viewers of some of the legacy that we're talking about, when you look at A&R Robinson, I was telling my wife today, she said, Leo, you keep mentioning the fact that A&R Robinson was the brainchild of ICC, the International Criminal Court. A&R Robinson was the father of that, right? He brought that as an idea into the world, and then we see just about 2 days ago, Vladimir Putin was a warrant for his arrest was given out by the International Criminal Court. I say, wow, what an amazing, not that I'm celebrating the situation, but to know that a guy from Tobago, right here in Tobago, a guy in Tobago was able to create something so big and so impactful that it could really change the course of human history. Global implications, right? To know that Christine Kangaloo is stepping into the shoes that he once held. When you think of Ellis Clark, who would have been very instrumental in the structuring and putting together of the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago in its inception back in 1962. And to know that Christine Kangaloo, top 3 in terms of somebody that could step in there and is prepared and is built for it. I'm excited because we're going into a time where sovereignty as a nation is going to be challenged there. When you look at this, because the long story short, the Cold War has reignited. It was dormant for a while. It has reignited. And you see BRICS is expanding. You see NATO expanding. You see a lot of bullying taking place internationally. And we need somebody that has the ability, and hopefully she also has the willingness to lead us as the head of state alongside the Prime Minister or Prime Ministers coming in the future, because, you know, she's going to be the president even if another Prime Minister comes in the future. And I think we may have the opportunity, because, you know, we are the economic capital of the Caribbean. We may have the opportunity to really stand out and be something and be proud of ourselves with good leadership. That's what I'm optimistic about.
Very good. And I share sentiments with Leroy about the fact that I am always, we celebrate that, you know, second consecutive female president, right? But again, that's not something that does be playing on my mind because I always question being a female is an immutable characteristic. You can't change that down to yourselves, right? But can you do the job? What do you bring to the table, right? If it's as good as any man, you should get the job. You understand? If it is that you are being elected, I have a problem being elected just because you're female and they want to play tokenism. That is where I have a problem. But I don't see that with her extensive career in legislation, being a lawyer, and in politics as well, right? Serving in different cabinets. I don't see that being an issue in terms of her ability to exercise the role, right? All right, so Mr. James also brought up a very important point about the executive power, and I have an excerpt here to read from the Parliament's website, right? And I would read, and I'm paraphrasing because they still have the pronouns he there, even though we are now in the second term of a female president, right? All right, so the Trinidad and Tobago Republican Constitution provides for a president who is the head of state and commander-in-chief of the armed forces. He or she is also the repository of all executive authority, right? So backing up Mr. James's point, his or her powers are exercisable within certain constitutional limits, and most of his or her constitutional acts must be performed in accordance with the advice or after consultation with another authority, usually the cabinet, i.e. the prime minister or the leader of the opposition. Although the president does not sit in parliament, he or she is responsible for the summoning, I think this is propagation, is a typo. Prorogation, yes, thank you. And dissolution of parliament, and also gives assent to bills. All right? So backing up what Mr. Max James says, the repository... Anthony, sorry.
Which is your favorite James?
No. Mr. Anthony James is favorite. Because they're here so often, right? Yes. So backing up Mr. Anthony, the executive authority is vested in the president. And so, yes, I do share sentiments that some of the powers more so get pushed to the prime minister, right? Even though the president acts in accordance to consultation of the prime minister and the cabinet, even in the THE, right? But I want to move on to a very pertinent topic here, guys, right? For Mr. Pandey, he was being touted for probably about 2 or 3 times now, touted for president. Mr. Pandey said he doesn't want the position because it's because of the powers that it's because of the power that the office currently has and probably needs to change, right? But also, we're looking at the usefulness of the office of the president in Trinidad and Tobago and the bill that the president costs the taxpayers on a yearly basis. And I have some stats to read for you, right? So this is from a report from last year, right? The salary of the president is $64,000 per month. There's a duty allowance of an extra $10,000. There's a housing allowance of $28,000, although the housing allowance only comes into play if the president is not living at the official president's residence, which the last president was not. So you're basically paying the president to live at her own residence, right? There's a lot of other bunch of allowances for traveling. The cost of transportation is paid for by the state. The cost of entertainment is paid for by the state. Telephone access is paid for by the state. Medical expenses paid for by the state. So we're looking at just figure remuneration is almost over $100,000 per month. The office of the president to support the office of the president costs the state $19 million per year. And we're talking about all the support staff, all the vehicle, the assets, everything, right? Given the duty and role of the president, do you think that bill, that taxpayer bill to support that office is worth it? right? I know it's a heavy question.
Well, I don't think
It's a heavy question.
apart from looking at it from the financial angle, which is not really the critical angle. Really. The critical angle, the one more of what we put it in quotation marks. The democracy. By putting that in quotation mark, because that's very questionable. But in terms of having a real republican state, when you're talking republicanism, which is what we desire, right, with the meaning that republicanism has, what you need is an executive president. It's not necessary to have this type of president in addition to the office of prime minister. Mr. Manning would have foreseen that. And he really got the cue from me.
He got the cue from you?
Yeah. I'll tell you how, because back in 2000, when I started calling for constitutional reform, I raised the matter of the presidency. And I would have written to Basdio Pandey, who was the prime minister. And I copied the letter to A.N.R. Robinson, and I copied the letter to Patrick Manning, who was the opposition leader.
At the time?
Yes. And then soon after, there was the 1818, and he became prime minister. And thereafter, later in 2001, they had increased the number of seats and so on. He became the prime minister, and he started to activate the process of constitutional reform. Not with the advice that I would have supplied or submitted in the letter to Mr. Pandey, which was copied to him. I spoke of a president to manage, to supervise, that's the word I use, to supervise the partnership between Tobago and Trinidad. Because I was looking at constitutional reform to bring about equity between Tobago and Trinidad. You raise the question of sovereignty. And you see the question of sovereignty will come in now because where the world is going. But right here, within what they call Trinidad and Tobago, there's no sovereignty. There's no sovereignty to the Tobagonian. That is being disregarded, disrespected, and life is going on as normal. Political parties are turning a blind eye to the realities of what is going on here. And the Tobagonian is affected. After 400 years, the Tobagonian is still subjected. So that I don't really boast about appointments in Trinidad, because it is all done, those appointments are done in the context where you and I, this entire table here, this whole history here, our history of being Tobagonians in our own land, and our slave labor would have purchased this land. And we were born with our rights as human beings. And those rights are being suppressed. Even as they are sending warrants for, you said Putin, that's a joke, really. That's a NATO joke, because what NATO has done is that NATO has manipulated what A.N.R. Robinson did. Robinson had great ideals when he initiated and called for the International Criminal Court. He was really dealing with justice. But the ICC is not dealing or aren't dealing with justice. They are using it as a political tool to lock up Africans and people who are not really supporting NATO, if you understand what NATO means. America and those European nations who really believe that they're in charge of the world. But they can't lock up everything. They have to look within themselves, first of all, to lock themselves up. They have been causing a lot of war and havoc in the world. But no NATO leader is being summoned to that ICC. And so that we need to be very alert and understand the kind of politics, colonization and selfishness. They are still alive in the world and happening right here in Trinidad and Tobago. So that, do I have any high hopes for the presidency? I really can't see that I have high hope that she will rise above the political partisanship and so on, given the culture of Trinidad. One of the things you don't understand why Robinson would have stood apart from them is because he was not really cultured in Trinidad by Trinidad and have the prejudices that are located in Trinidad there. Because what's going on in Trinidad is a straight war between Africa and India. That is what is influencing the politics. What you call party in Trinidad is really two tribes. And let us be intelligent and be real, and so that you have a small constituency that people call the 1%. they control the plantation that is the PNM, because by and large, the PNM voters are a large African plantation, and it is in fact a plantation. And the UNC themselves, they have their own constituency, but it's a straight war between them, so that there's no really nationhood. The reason why you could have crime running away and so many issues not being attended to, because when it comes to election, people will not see the issues. As far as they are concerned, we have to remain in charge of the state. That's on the African plantation side, controlled by the 1%. And on the UNC side, that came from India largely, they are fighting for control of the state. I remember in all of that, Tobago is nowhere. So even when we're discussing presidency, the role of the president, what we expect, in fact, what we expect from government on the whole, because the president really is the head of everything, head of the army.
State, yeah, full state, everything.
Head of everything, really. But what really can the president do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I want to cater to Adana because if I came by Leroy now, Leroy will get a chance for Adana to talk.
In my mind, I'm thinking, listening to the wealth of knowledge that came from you and the breakdown and everything, is it possible, or what would it take, or how long would it take to reform the action of what we know as the office of the president to be what the president should be? Right.
So as I said, Mr. Malin had prepared a constitution on that. The only thing what was wrong with Mr. Malin's constitution is that he had planned to go to bed one night as prime minister and wake up the next morning. I'm telling you, those constitutions are published, you know that, eh?
Yeah.
Well, you probably might not have been in the heart of the thing. Mr. Malin, in Mr. Malin's proposal, he was going to bed tonight and wake up he was going to bed tonight as the prime minister and wake up the next morning as the president of Trinidad and Tobago, executive president. There would have been no office now of the prime minister. Or he would have, but it would not have meant the same thing. Right. Might have been the top person under him in the cabinet, but but in terms of responsibilities, he was turning the office of prime minister and president into one executive president.
So you want to make yourself supreme leader?
Yes, that was going on. and he had brought in Jim and thing in the prime minister quarters and so on. He was walking cocky. Yeah, man, hand in, when you see Mr. Manning, hand in pocket and thing. And the plan didn't stop there, They were discovering a lot of oil in Tobago. Yeah, a lot of, well, not just oil, gas in Tobago. And his plan was to become the president of the Eastern Caribbean. Grenadian City, which you don't remember that?
I remember that.
Yeah, he was going those nations because he discovered a lot of oil and gas, and then he came up with the term. Don't forget it, It was 2005 in a meeting at Market Square. Am I pointing correctly? Market Square. Yeah, and he said energy is to Trinidad. What tourism
is to Tobago.
Is to Tobago. We must not forget these things. In fact, at one point in time, given the nature of the situation, Irving London said at one point in time, that just came back to me this morning. He said, I'm a little boy in my own country. You remember that statement? Yeah, Mr. London, Chief Secretary of Tobago said, I'm a little boy in my own country. But he was really describing the status of Tobago in all of this. And we have to own our own truth.
And we see that play out multiple times, not just Mr. London.
Not just Mr. London, but throughout.
Yeah.
If that means, you know what I'm saying? So will the president address these issues? I don't think so.
Let me jump in, and then I might probably give my views on that.
Not to go off on too much of a tangent, but Mr. James said something that it really relieved me, or made me feel more relief. Because just this morning I was thinking, if you look at the International Criminal Court, it was established just before the Iraq War with the United States. And I thought to myself, because I don't know a lot about A.N.R. Robinson, right? I know the titles he held, etc., but obviously as a little boy, right? I'm not particularly interested in politics at the time, right? So I don't know a lot about him. But I said to myself, it kind of disturbing or sinister at least, that the International Criminal Court, and I don't have a problem with them giving a warrant for the arrest of Putin for criminal
war crimes,
war crimes, right? However, I noted that no warrant was given to George Bush when Iraq was invaded, right? And I said to myself, I wonder if this is the ICC that Ian Robinson has in mind. So when I hear you say that, no, this is not the ICC Ian Robinson, it brought relief to me because I want to look up to Ian Robinson. And if what I'm seeing here is his...
But he's not responsible for that. That was not his idea. He was really dealing
I was wondering what he was thinking
with justice.
about. But back to the presidency, right? You made mention, and I'm going to be bouncing off at things that you say a lot because, you know, that's just the direction this conversation seems to be going where I am concerned, right? You made mention of the fact that Manning wanted to become the leader of the Eastern Caribbean, right?
Trinidad and Tobago and the Eastern Caribbean.
Trinidad and Tobago and the Eastern Caribbean. And people who know me know I'm not a big fan of the PNM, long story short, right? However, even though that is the case, it is a fact that when it comes to international affairs, I feel as though the PNM stands head and shoulders above most, if not all other parties except NJAC. That's just how I feel. The reason why I feel that way, you look at things like most recently, we are a republic, we are a sovereign nation, right? Because we have our own constitution. The president plays a big role in that because that says that we are a republic, right? But when you look at the judicial arm of our government, the highest court of appeal is still the Privy Council. And when I see the present PNM administration trying to change that so that we have the Caribbean Court of Justice and the opposition holding us back in that way. I don't feel well about the opposition right now, to tell you the honest to all gospel truth.
But you have to understand, go ahead.
And when I hear about constitutional reform, I feel good about it. But honestly, when it comes to the PNM, I tend to be very careful because I remember they were the ones who tried to amend the Freedom of Information Act so that it would take so long for you to get information when you apply for it, that tyranny could have resulted out of it, right? And so I'm careful about that. But at the same time, I kind of want to see Christine Kangaloo in a position, if constitutional reform happens, whereby some of these wrongs could be fixed and that she could play an active role in fixing it, because I feel as though when I look at Kangaloo's resume, when I look at what she has shown she has been capable of doing in the past, etc., I said, this is a woman I want in the fight right there, and I feel as though she was, because she came in the office of the Prime Minister. It wasn't under Rowley, it was under Manning when she came into the office of the Prime Minister, etc. And I said to myself, this woman may be groomed for greatness, right? Because of her party affiliation, because of her experience, etc. But then I also feel, and that is how I feel throughout tonight, everything pertaining to Christine Kangaloo and becoming president. Even though I'm scared, because I know what they represent in times past, I'm also optimistic because I know what they represent in times past. And when it comes to the Eastern Caribbean, let me just say real quick, right? Nations exist. The whole reason that we invented nations as human beings is to reach the collective needs of a group of people that have certain commonalities, right? And so the naturalness, and I know that is probably not a word, but the extent to which a nation exists in a natural way would reflect the needs of the people, right? And I feel as though the Federation of the West Indies, which existed between 1958 to 1962, was a more natural nation. Something that would have suited the needs of us as English-speaking West Indians than what we have presently. And then when I consider the fact that it was Jamaica that broke up the Federation of the West Indies through Alexander Bustamante, etc., etc., and they broke it up because geographically, and when you look at the needs, you have to take geographic location into consideration. Geographically, it benefited Trinidad and Tobago in a way because the Eastern Caribbean, the English-speaking Caribbean, is closer to Trinidad and Tobago than Jamaica. Sometimes I say to myself that naturally, the Eastern Caribbean should have been one nation. So I'm not totally against that idea. But bringing it back to the president, I feel as though because she has the intelligence and the experience she has, somehow, because she knows things I don't know, just as you know things I don't know, somehow she could use her authority. I remember Anthony Carmona say, people think people think I have powers that I do not have. And they think I don't have powers that I do have.
That's right.
I do hope that one of the powers that I think she don't have, that she does have.
I feel the same way.
Bring a greater amount of sovereignty into the Trinidad and Tobago space, and more so into the Eastern Caribbean space. Because for me personally, that is my nation. I'm Federation of the West Indies guy.
Well, I think that's the future of the Caribbean people here. Who have come from Africa and India and other parts, come and settle here. Federation would be the, or unification, however we want to term it, will be the future here. So that, but that was not really being disputed. When I spoke of that, I really was referring to Mr. Manning's attitude. He really he was moving with a God complex.
Right.
And he was using, because the Eastern Caribbean, they're poor. Right? And he was using the energy resources here.
And the capacity to find it.
You know, for that lordship, really. It wasn't really about a genuine unity. Because in that very constitution, the part that dealt with Tobago was 1 or 2 lines to be prescribed. He fixed every institution in Trinidad that he wanted to deal with, and he leave a subordinate part for Tobago. Not equal, not equitable, a subordinate part there to be prescribed. And that is when the London administration started now to deal with constitutional reform in Tobago here.
Right.
Well, they didn't call it constitutional reform. They were looking now to amend the THA, which is far different from reforming Tobago and Trinidad and elevating Tobago into sovereignty. You know what I'm saying? They were really obeying the edict from Patrick Manning down there. And remember the other statement that Patrick Manning made. This is my beloved son. Referring to Ovid London. This is who is probably even older than him. This is my beloved son in whom I am well pleased.
Yeah.
That's a scripture from the Bible.
From the Bible, yeah.
God referring to Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So you follow what I'm saying?
God complex.
No, the Constitution has been totally betrayed. Not perfect, but many critical parts have been betrayed. Now, for instance, in the Constitution there, the Prime Minister, every quarter, is supposed to be reporting to the President on the conduct of the government. You know that? The Prime Minister is supposed to be reporting the conduct, how well the government is going, to the President. That does not happen. Even when Robinson was in office, he was reminding Pandey that he is not reporting on the conduct of the government. No, if that was really working, we'd have had a better running state machinery. With all the corruption and crime just gone totally out of hand. We don't even know. They don't even know how to pull it back. The crime, the drugs, and let me tell you something too. We need to understand the politics. The global politics here, especially control from the powerhouse down here, is to send guns and drugs into African communities. The guns and drugs in Trinidad and in Tobago here, not affecting the East Indian community. We have the vulnerable population. Let me repeat that. The vulnerable population easy to be culturally invaded and affected. Contrary to what Bob Marley said, that we know that what they say, let me get this song right. They say what we know is what they tell us, and we are so ignorant that anytime they could reach us, well, they are reaching this population here.
This
population is culturally affected and easy to reach. Just before you come in there, if that was happening, let me tell you something. And under this constitution too, the president can fire the prime minister and fire the government. It happened in Australia, 1975. Out of 1975. the Governor General who represents the Queen down there, the same constitution we have here, fired the Prime Minister. So you have governments here engaged in runaway corruption and scandal, and the office of president just there. Just going around. It's a culture. So I'm saying to you, she will be quite marvelous and magnificent if she can usurp that, if she can get out of that and rise above that. Because there's a culture, and the reason why they elected her to is because, and it's a culture. Remember, it's a culture that elected her, and they don't want any president who will pull up the prime minister. Just the same way they don't want a police commissioner who will pull up the prime minister. So let us be conscious here. God has not given us a brain here to be
bring it back to be sensitive discussion. Right? You're preempting discussion. No, that's what you just spoke about is one of the sticking points in her appointment. Right? And I'm just going to list some of her positions before she got into office as the president, right? So she would have been, she was the president of the Senate, right, from 2015. She also served in Patrick Manning's cabinet as a Minister of Legal Affairs and Minister of Science, Technology, and Tertiary Education, right? So she was ministry in those two. She was a minister in those two ministries, right? In a previous PNM government, right? And up until her appointment, if I'm not mistaken, she was a member of the PNM. Given that. We are accustomed to appointments that are of the president that are not necessarily politically aligned, right? Is this now an issue, right, going forward that, okay, Mr. Keith Rowley, you're PNM, we appointed you as president, and so you can't, because we're talking about discipline, you said that the president's supposed to be able to, the prime minister has to report to the president for the conduct of the government. Can you rein in somebody who put you there? You understand? Let me ask that to Adana first.
I mean, if you stand in your authority, but as Mr. James said, she would be really marvelous to do that. Because it is, in fact, it's undeniably a culture. It's a culture that we have allowed, that has been allowed, not we, that has been allowed to run a long race. And how you're going to rein that back in, you know, is something that this person, as my colleague here is saying, who has all this hope in this person. I have the same hope. I want to see the same things. I want to see the accountability as well. You know, as I said, the speech that she gave this morning, it gave me hope. And I'm like, please let this come to life, because this is what we want to see. Because, I mean, in the past, you've been hearing, you can't see the president, you can't hear the president, you don't know what the president does, and she come with this whole long, pretty, you know, list of things that I want to implement, which, you know, is good. But the part about the accountability is what I really long to see, you know, and I don't know how it is going to happen. Let the marvelous juice flow from her, you know, because the president is supposed to hold, based on what the Constitution says, the president is supposed to hold the government accountable. And we have not been seeing this happening. For all the presidents that I have known, I mean, I just come on the scene, you know, I'm green, you know, but still, I have not. I don't know what the effectiveness of a president is, and I'm still learning, and I'm sitting here in the company of a wealth of knowledge. I think I'm in a good place, you know, so I'm still trying to figure out, what we're doing, how are we going to do this? Because it has to be done if we want to see the change in face of Trinidad and Tobago.
Go ahead, Mr.
One thing I'm very hopeful for, I'm praying for, is that Miss Christine Kangaloo, the Honorable now, as president, understands that when you're in an environment where corruption is rampant, right, where things are not happening the way they are supposed to happen, lawfully according to the law, right, righteousness could appear to be audacity. How dare you stand up to the man who put you in the position that you're in? How dare you go against the Constitution? I need my Christine Kangaloo, President of Trinidad and Tobago, to get up and say when and wherever that is necessary. And that is all I really want to say concerning that matter. I hope she could stand up.
Because
there is nothing constitutionally that holds her back from doing that. This thing is really a mental thing, you know? And culturally, you mentioned Australia. There are cultures that even though their constitution does not allow them to be as free and as independent as Trinidad and Tobago, Australia to me appears to be one that is more sovereign than Trinidad and Tobago. You mentioned that the president rose to the occasion and divorced the government when the government did the wrong thing. We bought 2 ferries in APT James and Buku Reef. Do you know that the company that financed that, those 2 ferries, is only allowed, according to the Australian constitution, because they are Australian company, to finance projects that give financially very beneficial jobs to Australians. That is why when you go on the boat and you say, let me see the captain and the vice captain and everybody who ranking, it's an Australian. It will never be a Tobagonian. That is culture. Their culture dictated their legislature, which enabled them to function in their relations with a nation that is more sovereign than their own, as if they were the superior. And I'm hoping and I'm optimistic because you see Christine Kangaloo, because she is elephant in the room, the most blatantly politically affiliated president we have ever had. Right? I am optimistic that the people of Trinidad and Tobago will be paying very close attention to her. Because as Mr. James would have pointed out, even though Manin had a good idea, dictator, tyranny, sometimes good ideas come from not necessarily upright people, you know. You understand? Good ideas sometimes come from not necessarily upright people. And so, at the end of the day, just in case you're wondering, what this have to do with you, the viewer, you are in total control over this. Because what we think, this discussion that we have in that builds culture that will dictate what happens next. We have the tools. Let's do what we need to do and pay attention.
But Olia, I have a gripe, right? I have a gripe because I quote the amount of money we spend on the officer. Right? It's plenty money. When I work in and I see that tax money come out of my pay every month, it does hurt me because it going to somebody who I find not serving a purpose. No, I have not saying the president has a lot of duties, right? One of the duties the president has, right, is to address the nation in times of peril and give us hope. We have had, in my lifetime, over the past 3 years, the worst time that I have ever seen, right? Talking about the pandemic. I have not seen the president address the nation once. Not one she have come across, right? And so this is not on the current president. This is about the office. Not one she had come across, right? She had sent out letters and addressed the nation, giving us some hope we could bear the storm, hold strain. These are things. We had to listen to the prime minister go on and on and on, where he got slap down people and all of that. When the president's supposed to be giving us hope, I pay $19 million a year for that. It's not worth it. You understand?
And at the end of the day, too, moderator, you see, the president cannot get down into the politics itself. You see? So that the office comes with constraints. He can provide ideals, address the nation, like for instance, what Robinson did. You know, Robinson realized, you see, Robinson had a philosophy. He had culture and character. And he has an understanding as to where societies need to be. He was a believer. He believed in God. If I'm saying, in fact, he removed Basdio Pandi. In fact, in earlier times, people generally believe in God. All the constitution, you see, they mention God. And he said, and that's from the preamble of the constitution. And he removed Mr. Pandi on the basis of moral and spiritual values. You can't run a world, a society, without moral and spiritual values. We're lying to itself. And the world believe in a lie. The world is run by lies. and a lot more lies now. So that Robinson realized the state is going off track. He give you the examples, and he said streams flow into rivers, rivers into seas, and seas into oceans. He said we have a creeping dictatorship because it begins by a stream. It's going into a river. It's going somewhere. So, but Robinson can make that point because of where he stands and see the society. You look at what is passing for government. And let's be blunt about it. The PNM and the UMC, they are most corrupt. And they are responsible for the corruption and the decay. They are supervising the corruption and the decay of the society. They intervene in nothing meaningful. Politics is now a hustle. We really have a state here.
I would like to get a politician salary.
They have turned the thing into a hustle. You look at the Prime Minister's alarming statement concerning the DPP, that they rented a building over 3 years for $45 million, an empty space. And he's coming after 3 years. 3 years to complain and lambaste the DPP. Yeah. How can I, as a responsible Minister for Finance, a responsible Prime Minister, be renting an empty building and not report to the nation about anything? And only because something happened and the DPP come out and make a statement, he is now trying to cover up and talking to his base and blame the DPP. So I don't have a role as Prime Minister in that. And couldn't I intervene after a month? If I give a space to the DPP, after a month, you wouldn't go inside it. We have to discuss that. And I must engage the public too. Let the public discuss it. Because not the Prime Minister's business alone.
It's money.
You feel what I'm saying? It's the people's business. And clearly, the Prime Minister, he doesn't care. There's no other conclusion you can come to. Those PNM supporters may not like that, but that's the fact. If you're running a company, could you rent an open space?
No.
Every month?
No. Taxpayers' dollars.
And justice cannot be served, really? Because if the institution is not functioning, who is responsible, really? The DPP? Anybody voting for the DPP?
No.
You vote for a Prime Minister, you vote for a government. And the government can come and tell me, no, that's an independent office. Independence and isolation, they're not the same thing. You're independent in terms of your investigations and so on. But in order to bring justice, I'm responsible as Prime Minister. And I have to make sure that the environment is there.
And you talk about Robinson and how he was able to remove, change the Prime Minister office based on moral and spiritual values. He had the backbone to do that.
Yeah.
I will pay $90 million for that.
And was Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve? It was one of those days, I think it was New Year's Eve. Somewhere around there.
Yes, that was the anniversary.
Or New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said when he addressed the state, he said when it comes to him, he said, I'm paraphrasing, there are times in your life when you have to make big decisions. He said, and when it comes to him, he said, I do not shirk from such responsibility. And as such, I have appointed Patrick Manning Prime Minister of Trinidad. That was like a dagger to Panday. On the basis
of moral and spiritual.
I can't agree with you, gentlemen.
Go ahead.
But I cannot agree with you, gentlemen. I heard you say you would pay $19 million for a president that you know.
He doesn't want to do
that. Job with moral and spiritual values.
You had a backbone.
Right? No. I am not interested. Because I remember when Ian Robinson gave that speech, and whilst I may have been a child, and whilst I may have not been very interested in politics at that time, I remember the Hindu community was very offended by that statement, right? Because if I could be wrong, but I believe Ian Robinson was a Christian, right? And Patrick Manning was a Christian also. And so there is nothing wrong with saying moral and spiritual values, but understand that the legislature, which in the case of Christians is the Bible, which in the case of Hindus is the Bhagavad Gita and other texts, which in the case of Muslims is the Quran. When it comes to the legislature, that says if you cannot agree on what is morally upright, what is spiritually upright, you turn to this. These books do not always align with each other. And it is a law in Trinidad and Tobago. And that law is reinforced every time we speak, right? And we say the national anthem. Every creed and race finds an equal place. So therefore, it is an agreement amongst us that we do not in any way or fashion try to put our moral and spiritual values on others. And one might say, let me just finish real quickly. One might say, so how do you instill moral values? They leave the spiritual out of it because of the religious connotation, right? How do you maintain morality? You do it through legislature. You have law. And what I will pay $19 million for is a president that serves as a check and a balance. So that, especially this one here, this looking like a $19 million president, if she was to serve as a check and a balance to ensure that what is taking place in the parliament, what is taking place in legislature, is in agreement with the law, with the constitution, because we have a very good constitution as is, you know. It's just that we have somebody mentioned, lawlessness, but as somebody mentioned, politics and a hustle. And I'm seeing it clearly.
But let me just interject there.
So I want to check on a balance. I want to deal with legislation.
Well, yes. And I agree that. And I'm saying too, the president is not responsible for legislation.
No.
You follow what I'm saying? But the president can have an eye. We all must have an eye of what is acceptable morally, and spiritually. And I don't want you necessarily to cast a kind of aspersion to Islam and to Hinduism as opposed to Christianity. Because I don't think, like for instance, India has the most Hindus. They don't tolerate corruption in the government and in the public space. Let me tell you something. Innate in every human being is a sense of morality and spirituality. Innate. What is happening is that because of evil in the world, it is being eroded and being eroded and being eroded, and people are tolerating that erosion. But Robinson didn't speak of a Christian morality.
Just a morality.
He was talking about in public affairs. The laws on them. The laws are there, and the laws actually deal with morality and spirituality. Because at the foundation of the Constitution, where the societies evolved from, was a place of stronger morality and stronger spirituality. And the laws were made. For instance, they are not removing Burglary law. That is a Christian thing or a Hindu thing or a Muslim thing? No. All those laws were derived from a sense of conscience, a sense of morality, a sense of spirituality. If a human being does not have those things, he's something else. So don't misapply, because I know that there has been that conversation in the space to say, well, the Hindus were annoyed or whatever. Careful how you're really pronouncing on that as to brand those people as being.
Well, you give an example that proves my point.
Explain further.
You just said, right? In it, there is morality.
Yes, and spirituality.
In it, there is spirituality. Fully agree, 100%.
Yeah.
Because God is omnipresent. I think
He made of us. He made of us.
Just about every
in His image and likeness.
The atheists would agree that God is omnipresent, right? And
even the atheists agree.
And so God... I wouldn't even disagree with that. I suspend the atheists so that they're talking shit between me and you. I suspend the atheists playing politics. Anyway, so I agree with you, right? However, a message could be poorly given and poorly received, right? When a Christian president gives the prime ministership to a Christian man over a Hindu, irrespective of what his real intentions are, because I don't know what his real intentions are, and uses terminology spirituality The morality I don't have a problem with, and I don't think the Hindus would have had a problem with it. What that, whilst he may have meant something very genuine and correct, what that may say to the little Christian boy is that my religion, my school of thought, my creed is superior. And we see it in even the example you give. Because you mentioned the Bogari law, right? To some people, it is innate that two men should not have sex with each other, much less be married. But to some people, like myself, you know, I believe in gay marriage. And I'll tell you why I believe in gay marriage.
We don't have to go down that road.
No, we don't have to go down the sexuality of it. Let me show you morality.
Really don't have to
Let's talk about morality and spirituality and how it plays into legislature. Let's say two men, for whatever reason, right? Let's say two men was to live together, build a life together, build a home together, build a car together, one was to die. And the parents of the one was to come and say, all of this belongs to me. There are very few people, irrespective of their creed, irrespective of their moral and spiritual values, that would agree that it should not go to the other guy. So therefore, there are very few people who would totally disagree that the union should not be legally recognized. Right?
Yeah,
and so what I'm saying, that is it does give a very clear example of why we have to be careful when we use moral and spiritual language when talking about legislation.
Going down the road of that, of the gay thing and so on.
Well,
if you want to come back and have a different program on that,
yes.
I'm very free and very...
No, we're talking about
you know what I mean?
To
deal with morality. What I'm saying, but in the Constitution,
yes,
Robinson did not author the Constitution. Ellis Clark authored the Constitution. And in a real sense, too, Ellis Clark did not author the Constitution because they copied the Constitution
from England. Yeah.
Yep.
Right? And they were not speaking of any Hindu morality or of any Hindu spirituality or Christian spirituality. He didn't say that. Robinson went to the clause in the Constitution. The Constitution, he didn't say the Constitution was Christian. Pandey and all of them swear to the Constitution, to uphold the Constitution. A lot of Hindus in government, Muslim in government, they swear to uphold the Constitution. And in that Constitution, it spoke of moral and spiritual values. But clearly there's a need for constitutional reform, but not for gay marriage. Because as a matter of fact, in a real sense, there's no such thing as gay marriage. Because male and male can't marry.
All right, we're going to stop with it. We're going to stop with it because Mr. Leroy George will explode on tonight's program and you will not end tonight's program. All right?
And the Rosa Monsiton has not contributed.
You understand?
Exactly. Well, what I want to say before we round up is I want to agree with the moral and spiritual part and also to defute the fact that you were going down the path of religion rather than spiritual and moral. Because religion is something completely different. And you raise the point where in India they are Hindus and they have the Christian and they have the thing going there, right? Additionally, I want to say that Mr. A.N.R. Robinson was a one-of-a-kind man. We'd hardly have people like him leave back. You understand? So if it's have an A.N.R. Robinson out there, we're looking for you. We need your help.
Please.
Right? Because I think he was listen to me, I mean, I was a little girl, but he impacted my life in a kind of a way that nobody else really ever did on the political scene in general, as a matter of fact. So this is me giving my appreciation for that guy. And thank you guys for the wealth and knowledge that listen to me. You might not have heard my voice a lot tonight because I was soaking in the information that was passing, and I enjoy being here tonight.
Nice.
You know, I'm looking to run down.
But we know to call you back, you know, to make sure that your voice is heard, because, you know, as me myself, being a moderator, I have learned a wealth of information from the guests that pass through. Every single week I learn something, right? I wouldn't even say that, all right? But Tobago, we thank you for having us invade your living rooms and your cell phones tonight All right? We thank you for having us. And from Tobago Update Studios, I have to bid you a good night. We'll see you next week where we continue the sparkling discussions. All right? Have a good night.